Mark had learned to live on coffee, exhaustion, and quiet hope. Every morning before sunrise, he packed lunches with one hand while tying his son's shoes with the other. Being a single dad wasn't part of the life he had planned, but now it was the only life that mattered. His job at Carter and Keo barely paid enough to keep the lights on, yet he never complained. He couldn't afford to. His boss, Miss Carter, was known for being sharp, distant, and impossible to read. Around the office, people whispered that she had no heart. Mark never believed gossip, but he did fear her. That night, rain pummeled the windows like angry fists. Mark had just tucked 6-year-old Leo into bed after another asthma scare. The kid had fallen asleep, clutching his stuffed dinosaur, his breathing finally steady. Mark sat at the kitchen table, staring at unpaid bills, when a sudden knock cut through the silence. 3 sharp knocks. His stomach tightened. No one ever came over this late. He opened the door slowly, and there she stood, Miss Carter, soaked from head to toe. Rain dripped from her dark hair, her blazer clinging to her shoulders. Her expression was unreadable, serious, focused, intense. For a moment, Mark honestly wondered if he was about to be fired on his own doorstep. Before he could find his voice, she spoke. "You forgot something last night at my place." The words hit him like a punch to the chest. His mind spiraled instantly. Had he messed something up at work? Said something wrong? Did someone see him stay late? 1,000 fears flooded him in seconds: court papers, HR meetings, termination letters, ruined chances. His breathing turned shallow. I'm sorry," he stammered. She studied him closely, eyes narrowing slightly, as if weighing whether to say more. Water pooled around her shoes on the welcome mat. The rain thundered behind her like a warning. "I didn't realize it until this morning," she added. Mark's heart slammed harder. Last night, he had stayed late to finish a report she'd needed urgently. Had he left behind confidential files? Made a careless mistake? His entire future felt like it was dangling from the edge of that sentence. "I can explain," he said quickly. "Whatever it is, She raised a hand, cutting him off. "Not here," she said quietly. Behind him, the apartment was dim. The faint hum of the heater filled the silence. From the bedroom, Leo coughed softly in his sleep. Mark's chest tightened again, fear mixing with guilt and confusion. "Is this about work?" he asked cautiously. Miss Carter didn't answer right away. For the first time since he had known her, something softer flickered across her face, something almost human, tired, concerned, real. "Yes," she finally said. "And no," rain rolled down her lashes as she met his eyes again. "You left something behind," she repeated. "And it's important." Mark swallowed hard, bracing himself for whatever was about to change his life forever. Before Mark could form another question, Miss Carter reached into her soaked coat pocket. For a split second, his anxiety spiked again, his mind still racing with worst-case scenarios. Then she pulled out a small, familiar blue object. His son's inhaler. Mark froze. His breath caught in his throat as realization slammed into him. That wasn't fear he had felt earlier, it was panic. The kind that came from knowing your child might be in danger and you didn't even realize it. "Your kid needs this," she said softly, her voice completely different now. No sharp edge. No authority. Just quiet concern. For a moment, Mark couldn't move. His hands trembled as he reached for it. I thought it was under his bed," he whispered. "He had an attack earlier. I tore the place apart looking for it. I found it on my office floor this morning," she said. "You must have dropped it last night while you were rushing out." Relief hit him so hard his knees nearly gave out. He stepped back, pressing the inhaler to his chest like it was made of gold. "Thank you," he breathed. "You have no idea what this means." But she did have some idea, and Mark could see it in her eyes. Rain continued to fall behind her, soaking the hallway carpet. Without thinking, he stepped aside. "Please, come in, you're soaked." She hesitated only a second before stepping inside. The warmth of the apartment wrapped around her immediately simple furniture. Faded couch, a small dining table cluttered with papers and crayons. It wasn't much, but it was home. She glanced around quietly. Her gaze fell on the framed photo near the door, a younger Mark holding a smiling woman and a tiny baby wrapped in a blue blanket. Something shifted in her expression. "Leo's asleep," Mark said gently. Rough night with his breathing. Her posture softened. You work late. You raise him alone, and he's sick. It wasn't a question. Mark nodded. Some days are harder than others. A stretch of silence settled between them, no longer awkward, but heavy with things neither had ever said before. During office hours, they lived in separate worlds, boss and employee, power and pressure. But here, standing in his small apartment, those lines felt blurred. I almost didn't come, she admitted. But I kept thinking about his face when you rushed out last night. You were scared, Mark looked down. I always am. She studied him carefully now, not as an employer, but as a man standing between pride and exhaustion. You should take tomorrow morning off, she said. He looked up sharply. Ma'am? Not as a favor, she added. As a parent. I'll handle the rest. Emotion swelled in his chest, unexpected and overwhelming. Thank you, he said again, but this time it carried more than gratitude, it carried respect. From down the hall, Leo coughed softly in his sleep. Miss Carter turned toward the sound. And in that moment, Mark realized this night wasn't just about a forgotten inhaler. It was the beginning of something neither of them had ever planned, but both of them desperately needed. That night, something quiet but powerful shifted between them. Miss Carter stood in the narrow hallway of Mark's apartment, listening to the soft rise and fall of Leo's breathing through the half-open bedroom door. The sounds seemed to reach a place inside her that had been locked for years. In the office, she ruled with precision and distance. Here, surrounded by mismatched furniture and crayon-stained walls, she saw a different world and a different man. May I see him? She asked gently. Mark hesitated, then nodded. He pushed the bedroom door open slowly. Leo slept curled around his stuffed dinosaur, his tiny chest rising carefully with each breath. Miss Carter didn't step closer. She simply watched from the doorway, her eyes soft with something close to awe. You do this every day? She asked quietly. Every night, Mark replied. Every morning. Every fear. She turned to him then, really turned to him as if seeing him clearly for the first time. Not as the quiet employee who stayed late and never complained, but as a devoted father carrying a weight few ever noticed. You could have lost him tonight, she whispered. Mark nodded. That's my biggest nightmare. For a long moment neither spoke. The rain outside faded into a distant echo. Finally, she straightened, as if making a decision. Things will be different at work, she said. Your hours, your pay, your workload. Mark's eyes widened. Miss Carter, I didn't invite you in for... I know, she interrupted. That's exactly why this matters. Over the following weeks, change came fast. Mark received a raise that erased years of financial fear. His schedule shifted so he could be home every evening. For the first time since his wife passed, he stopped living in constant survival mode. And through it all, Miss Carter watched quietly, never crossing boundaries, never asking for thanks. But the looks lingered a little longer. Conversations stretched a little deeper. One evening, months later, she stayed late again. Not for work, he made coffee. She sat at the same small table where fear once lived. They talked about life, about loss, about the dreams they'd buried under responsibility. For the first time, she told someone about the child she had lost years before, the reason her heart had turned to steel. I forgot how to care, she admitted. Until I saw you, Mark reached across the table, not as her employee but as her equal. That night, a forgotten inhaler became the thread that rewove two broken lives. She never looked at him as just an employee again. And Mark never felt alone again, either.